The Super Smash Bros. Franchise has caused a surprising amount of real-world controversy, especially for a Nintendo game. Since its launch in 1999, the series has played host to conflict both in-game and in real life. Here are the biggest scandals in Smash Bros. History. In November 2018, Nintendo ran a Japanese advert for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate that featured a troubling representation of the character Mr. Game & Watch. The ad shows a character dressed in stereotypical Native American attire, complete with a loincloth and feather, and a color scheme shifted from black to red. The outfit was a callback to a 1982 Game & Watch game called Fire Attack, which saw the player defending an Old West fort against Native Americans attempting to burn the fort down. Nintendo had already edited the racist silhouette in a remaster of the game when it was part of the Game & Watch Gallery 4 compilation, which makes the image's inclusion in the much more popular Smash Bros. Franchise even more head-scratching. Luckily, it's an easy issue to patch out, and the image apparently didn't make it into the Western versions of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate at all. There are a lot of ways to play a fighting game, with many variables from damaged out to speed of gameplay being left in players' hands. As a result, players in the fighting game community tend to expect some consistency when it comes to playing head-to-head in a tournament setting. To accommodate players, most tournaments establish default rules for play that tend to remain unchanged from match to match. Unfortunately, that's not what happened during a fighting tournament called Genesis 4 in 2017. For some reason, the launch rate setting in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U was changed from the default 1.0 to 0.9, with the change taking place midway through the tournament without any explanation. This was only discovered toward the end of a set between Rei Kamorakiri, Furukawa, and Captain Zack Lorth that saw Kamorakiri lose 3-1. After realizing what had happened, the crowd revolted, sending up chants of "run it back" throughout the hall. At first, the tournament organizers seemed to agree with those demands. The decision was eventually made to have the fighters replay the final game, resuming the series with Captain Zack in a 2-1 lead. Kamorakiri took an extended break after the debacle, while another player affected asked for compensation. After all, the error potentially cost both players a shot at $10,000. Fortunately, the controversy only lasted for the weekend, as the tournament organizers did ultimately make the call to offer compensation to the players affected. The Smash Bros. Community is pretty wild, all things considered. For a group of people who are brought together by the common bond of a game that pits family-friendly characters against each other, the scandals that emerge from the game's fans can be as complex as anything you might find on television. Case in point, the Smash Bros. Community experienced a long con featuring identity fraud that went on for 3 years. A woman, referred to most commonly as Katie despite having multiple aliases, convinced an entire community of fans that she was the programmer behind the popular Project M mod for Super Smash Bros. Brawl. At first, people believed her claims, with the real developer being known until then as a reclusive individual who rarely revealed themselves to anyone. Katie later denied that she ever impersonated the famous mod's elusive programmer who goes by the name Magus online. Yet a group of Katie's former roommates have confirmed that she moved in with them under the pretense that she had developed Project M, and continued to live with them while pretending to make coding changes to the mod. The sheer amount of commitment the lie took is noteworthy. Katie had to live it for 3 years, and somehow her roommates only found out about the lies towards the tail end of their time together. The roommates, Alex Wallace and Adrian Nieto, were actually 2 film students who were creating a documentary about how Project M was made. They were 2 of the world's most well-versed people on the subject, and somehow Katie still had them fooled. The ruse continued up until top Smash player Jason Mewtwo King Zimmerman, who had previously corresponded with the real developer, confirmed that Katie wasn't them. After she was confronted about her deceptions, Katie disappeared. Wallace and Nieto don't know where she ended up, and she's since declined to comment on the subject outside of denying she ever impersonated Magus. What a long, strange trip it has been for Waluigi. The man who was once routinely referred to as the worst character in the history of Super Smash Bros. Has now become something of an icon, with a vocal fanbase supporting his inclusion in every Nintendo game. The game people want to see Waluigi in the most, however, is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. But as of the game's launch at least, that once again isn't happening. During the E3 2018 Nintendo Direct presentation, Ultimate got its longest time on screen to date, with several new characters being announced. While all of them were fun to see, none of them were Waluigi. So then the internet went wild. Fans began starting petitions to have the character included in the game, with some of those petitions getting thousands of signatures. Writers penned articles accusing Nintendo of being cowards, afraid of their most powerful character, and it was hard to tell what was a joke and what was real passion. Demands for Waluigi became a running gag, but also the source of a lot of frustration within a Smash Bros. Community, full of players who felt that their most wanted character requests were being ignored. The discourse surrounding the decision turned sour though, when fans began harassing game director Masahiro Sakurai with inappropriate content. Most of the community condemned the targeted harassment and stood in vocal support of Sakurai, but the hostile approach was still likely a major turnoff for the developers. As a result, we're afraid the company won't be in any hurry to put Waluigi into Ultimate. Despite the occasional flare-up of controversy, Super Smash Bros. Players generally make for a positive community. But that doesn't mean that one small subsection of the group can't ruin everything through toxic behavior. That notion necessitated the creation of something called the Harassment Task Force, a team made up of community influencers, tournament organizers, and series fans. The group's stated goal was to clean up the scene and make it more welcoming to new players. It didn't take long for the new team to have a case worth cracking. Almost immediately after forming, the group unearthed troubling accusations about Vikram Nightmare Singh, a Canadian pro who had already developed an under-the-radar, word-of-mouth reputation for his inappropriate behavior at tournaments. The task force discovered that Singh had been accused of having an intimate relationship with an underage girl, with a friend of his stating that he even faced a criminal charge over his conduct. After these accusations were discovered, Singh was banned from attending or playing in tournaments. Singh retaliated by threatening a lawsuit, which caused concern in the community, who worried if tournament organizers would be able to afford a legal battle. Fortunately for everyone, it appears Singh has since dropped the case, disappearing from Twitter altogether. The Metal Gear series Solid Snake was a popular character when he joined the fight in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and it wasn't just for gameplay reasons. The character's highly detailed, bulbous behind was a popular meme from the game, with players getting much amusement out of the character's solid assets. To many, it appeared as though the developers had gone out of their way to make sure people knew Snake was hitting the gym in between his complicated war stories. But when Snake made his appearance in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, people immediately noticed that something had changed. Snake had a serious case of two-dimensional glutes, and his many fans were unhappy. How unhappy? Many fans seem to genuinely describe the change as somehow nerfing Snake, even though it obviously didn't impact his viability as a fighter. Some of them even tweeted at David Hayter, the actor who provides Snake with his distinctive gravelly voice, to contact Nintendo on their behalf and ask them to change it back.
So there's something you like about me, huh?
Yeah, you got a great butt.
The saddest part of this controversy is that nothing has been done. For now, Snake's legendary hindquarters only lives on in mods of the game and community art. Hideo Kojima would be proud. Nothing will make the game community turn on a beloved franchise like the addition of a broken character. And for Smash, that character is Bayonetta. When a competitive game becomes unbalanced, the community begins to resent it, and often they express that resentment in some unhealthy ways, like directing it at developers, players who use the character and the game itself. Such was the case at EVO 2018, when the Super Smash Bros. Community was treated to what might be one of the least balanced, but still legal to use characters in major tournament memory. Since her arrival to the series in Super Smash Bros. Wii U, Bayonetta has been poorly received by the hardcore fighting game segment of the fanbase, with many community members being outspoken about the relative ease with which people can play as her and succeed. The controversy came to a head at EVO 2018, which saw some tournament and community favorites knocked out by lesser-known players using Bayonetta. Fans in the audience began booing and jeering anytime a player using Bayonetta won, sometimes resulting in competitors losing their tempers with the crowd. With fans already resenting the character and tensions rising throughout the tournament, the worst-case scenario happened, a finals match that consisted of two Bayonetta players fighting against each other. Booed as they walked on stage, the two players, Captain Zack and Barutalima Chintapali, decided to approach their final reset by staring at each other and not attacking, in silent protest to the vocal audience. The crowd was predictably upset, and tournament organizers had to step in and force them to continue their match. The lousiest part of the episode is that both players were under the age of 18 at the time of the match, which meant that the angry booing wasn't a great look for any of the grown adults in the audience. After the tournament, the community rallied against the EVO crowd in support of the two players. Everyone deserves a little bit of respect, even Bayonetta mains. Historically, Nintendo hasn't always been on the side of the esports community, and the company's relationship with Smash enthusiasts has always been a little bit strained, if not outright confrontational. EVO 2013 saw the grand finals of the Super Smash Bros. Melee event being threatened with shutdown by Nintendo. The company wanted the tournament organizers to take down the online stream of the event, seemingly believing the tournament to be either copyright infringement or bad publicity. As it turns out, their shutdown threats ended up being the worst publicity of all, especially given the circumstances of that particular year. Super Smash Bros. Melee was only at EVO in 2013 because its community had managed to raise over $100,000 for breast cancer research. Fan backlash was predictably vicious, with online commenters incinerating Nintendo for its hostile approach to the Smash Bros. Community. As major news outlets began to pick up and run with the story, Nintendo was forced to back down, but not before stubbornly sticking to its stance for way longer than was reasonable. There's a reason so many veterans of the Smash Bros. Scene are wary of Nintendo, and a lot of that distrust stems from this specific moment.